Welcome, everyone. My name is Jordan Bain, and this podcast is called Unveiling. I'm a certified Kabbalah instructor, senior guide, healer and teacher, and ritual master in the Modern Mystery School. My passion is to help people reconnect to their soul, live their true purpose, and find joy. And we call this podcast Unveiling because we're helping people to see beyond the illusions of everyday life, ask deeper questions, and really dive into the mysteries of who am I and what is my true purpose? Why am I really here? My guest tonight is an amazing woman named Angela. And I met Angela several years ago. We've done some work together in the mystery school and in the work that she does. She's been a leader in the wellness field for over 25 years. She works professionally with people struggling with substance use and mental health issues. Her passion for helping others is to reconnect them to their own emotional, physical, and spiritual health. This inspires her own commitment to her growth. Angela has always believed that helping others realize their personal strengths and their spiritual connections are the real foundations to lasting change. She's a certified life activation practitioner with the Modern Mystery School. And she and her son Noah actually recently just opened a new healing center on Cape Cod here in Massachusetts called Shambhala Healing Center. Congratulations on that.
Thank you.
It's super cool. I can't wait to come down and see that at some point soon. So welcome on the show. Thanks for being
Thanks a
here.
lot. Thank you. Excited to be here.
Likewise. So you've had a busy day and you've been doing all the things that you do. Tell me a little bit about your work as a substance abuse, counselor and working with people in recovery. Just like the short version of how you got into that and what that is in your what role that plays in your life.
Awesome. Okay. So 25 years ago, I started working in a substance use treatment center for women. I had been in long-term recovery myself, and I really just have always had a spark and a fire for helping people change and helping people recover and just really finding joy in life. So I've been there for 25 years. I've been the director there for probably about 15 to 17 years because basically every person that walks in is a new opportunity to help somebody reconnect to their strength and their spark of life and really get into like lasting wellness and recovery. And basically everybody's brought to their knees by life by something. And what do you do when you're there, and how do you get back up and reconnect to other people and really get on a course where you're not only are you changing your own life, but you're helping other people change. So it was a women's center for the past 24 years, and in the past 4 months, it's now a co-ed facility. So that kind of brings an exciting, different dynamic to it that I'm really enjoying, working with the men and the women.
Yeah, very cool.
Yeah.
So it's been a long time in that field,
Mm-hmm.
doing work with people in substance abuse recovery. So what are, when you think about recovery as a universal thing, right? So you and I have talked about this before and had many conversations about this over the last few years. What do you see about healing and recovery? What drew you when you first found out about the mystery school? What drew you to be like, there's something really here that I want to explore? What's your connection between spiritual healing and recovery?
So how I've stayed in this field for so long is really seeing and believing that the connection with other people and really discovering your own strengths and your own passions is what helps people stay in a lasting recovery. And I've always been committed to like finding that thing. What's the thing that's going to help really get people to stay in recovery? Because getting in is not so hard, but staying in long term and actually making those life changes, it seems to be there's this regression that happens with people that come through the program. They would stay 60, 90 days, do really well, and then somehow get pulled back into these patterns. And we had a young woman go through the program and do really well, but she couldn't shake her trauma patterns, her negative thought patterns. And so she found the mystery school. And then you all came and talked to me about this work. And I was like, this could be the thing that really actually gets in energetically and breaks those patterns, because I've seen people do the therapy, do the cognitive behavioral, medications, whatever it is they need, and something pulls them back. So this work, I had been in long-term recovery when I first did the sessions with Ariana and then really noticed a shift in myself, and then bringing them into the center and seeing people actually get not only free from their patterns, but being able to see a different life and have the kind of like the limitless hope that they deserve this life, and then the tools to move forward and access those changes in a lasting way. And when I saw
Mhm.
that happening, I knew that I wanted to get into this work. I knew that this was the missing piece for people in recovery, to reconnect. So segue, they say that the opposite of addiction is connection. So I always
Mhm.
thought it was connection to other people and definitely to a higher power. But drum roll, the missing
Mhm.
piece was that connection to your own spark of divinity and your own purpose. That for
Mhm.
me, seeing that now, doing that work at Emerson, doing it in my office, that's the actual shift where everything else you're doing to try to get well is going to really work and give people an absolute different chance at a better life and an excitement about it. That's the thing. This work
Mhm.
is freeing, and you get to look into different parts of yourself and really make changes, but it's the joy and the spark. And when I talk to people about in early recovery about reconnecting to their own divinity, they know this. They
Mhm.
light up, something in their eyes lights up, and they're like, why isn't anybody talking about this? So
Mhm.
even like they never say to me, what are you talking about? I don't understand. People know, people remember. And so that's just been phenomenal, being actually able to help open those doors with people and walk through them.
Yeah, it's amazing when I reflect on what is recovery and what is addiction. Like everyone has addiction
Yep,
in their
absolutely.
life.
Absolutely.
So your addiction might not be substance use. Maybe your addiction is working too hard.
Mhm.
Your addiction is negative self-talk.
Yep.
Maybe your addiction is I'm not enough. Maybe your addiction is I'm going to exercise nonstop because I'm addicted to, endorphins
Mhm.
instead of alcohol.
Sure.
Or maybe I used to be addicted to some sort of substance, but now I have substituted one of those other things.
Mhm.
And because everyone's, I would say suffers with, but maybe that's too strong of a term for some people, struggles with, or maybe some people don't struggle with it. They just enjoy it. Maybe but yet they're facing addiction in some way, regardless of their relationship with
Right.
addiction. Um, Even if they don't call it that, even if they don't see it as that, there's a way that addiction just means staying stuck
Yep.
and not progressing forward in life and not knowing who you really are. So then, addiction becomes, but not only a metaphor, but a reality of, well, how do we see ourselves
Mhm.
and how do we see our purpose and what are we doing with our daily life? Like, am I taking a step today to actually improve my life? Or am I just doing the same thing I've always done? If I'm
Sure.
doing the same thing I've always done, maybe I'm an addict. And that's, I don't know. Maybe that's very challenging for some people who might watch this podcast and realize, oh, I do the same thing every day.
Right. Right. But I
Mm.
think it's that when I think about addiction, and I've talked to hundreds and thousands of people over this 25 years,
Mhm.
it's this sense that something's missing inside of me. And
Yeah.
like you said, it could be work, it could be negativity, exercise, any of those things. But it's
Mhm.
there's like there's seeking and this searching that people have, and substances and things like that will almost turn that seeking off for a little bit, but it comes
Mhm.
back and it's even stronger. So it's
Mhm.
definitely like I think we come to this planet and we forget like that we're divinity along the way. And I truly believe that people that seek help for addiction, they haven't forgotten. They know. But like when you're little and you're special and there's something really cool about you, and no one's really talking to you about that, like how do you grow that? So
Mm.
I think what I'm finding, especially since doing this work, is that people know. They know, and they're desperate to get back to that, and they're desperate to have conversations about that, and they're really open, which is I just see this as as a key foundational piece for change, for change. Yeah.
Yeah. So as you do, because you just went to second step, Healers Academy, life activation training,
Yeah.
just in the last few months, right?
Yeah. November, sure.
November, right? So, and now it's like, this is the last day of February. So just in the last like 3 months, um, what are you finding when people receive life activation? Like specifically, what's the kind of feedback you're seeing, and how is that impacting people's recovery on a day-to-day basis? If you're having that kind of feedback, I'm not sure if you are.
Yeah, I've been doing the clearing and the rebalancing
Mhm.
sessions, and at Emerson, some life activations, and working with people in my office. And it's amazing how open people are, that they say to me, I want to feel different. Do you know what I mean? And so, we'll talk about kind of like the basic premise behind it, and about,
Mhm.
finding a peace within yourself and a reconnection to yourself. Probably the most common things people have said after the session is that they never realized they weren't in their bodies. They
Mm.
never realized that they weren't like present, or that they were really, really like energetically very wound up. And so people really feel a sense of relaxation. They'll
Mhm.
actually talk about feeling reconnected to themselves, because especially in early recovery, or when people are on the hamster wheel, running, the thing they're afraid to do is sit with self. So
Mhm.
one of the number one benefits that people report immediately is, oh my God, I could sit with myself. Not only could I sit with myself, but it felt really good. And I felt
Mm.
peaceful and hopeful, that like I can be present without having to run to something or reach to something. And that's been like beautiful to see, like right away, just that experience. And then
That's amazing.
yeah, and at the center where I work, mostly, at the treatment program, someone will walk out of my office and someone will say, what happened to them? They look, they look really relaxed, or they're able to just be quiet. I want that. You know what I mean? So then they're talking with each other about not being afraid to look at themselves and be with themselves. Because at least in substance use recovery, people don't relapse because a situation, person, place, or thing, they don't like how they feel about those things, and they don't like how they feel about themselves. So
Mm.
being able to give people a center and a calming, peaceful experience within themselves, and then have a conversation about how to nurture that and stay connected to that, seems to really be making a difference.
Yeah. What do you find people who are in that setting? I mean, I've had so many direct experiences, volunteering there, and we're doing the program that we created there. And now it's a different format. So whether we do that again in the future, I don't know. But all the times when we came and worked with the women who are in that center, um, the reception was amazing.
Hmm.
The way that they were able to make changes just blew us away, like way beyond what we had anticipated or thought might be happening.
Right.
The level of transformation was so noticeable just after one session. Then we did two, and then three sessions, and
Yeah.
sometimes we were able to come back and do a fourth, and people were in a very different place within themselves, even though technically they were still there in a rehabilitation and recovery center that's residential, and there for, like you said, 60 or 90 days typically, right?
Yeah.
So that's a pretty long time to look at your life and
Hmm.
make changes and make shifts. It's not like a 28-day program or something like that. And but even 28 days, that's a long time to be away from something. It's enough
Yeah.
time to make a new habit. It's enough time to rethink your life. It's enough time to heal and to make some changes.
Yeah.
Um, and I was always so blown away that the women that we worked with, often because they were so ready and so humble about where they were at, so honest, like, oh, I'm in recovery.
Hmm.
And I found that with a lot of clients that I work with at my office, one-on-one, a lot of people maybe aren't at that level where they've been brought to their knees so many times,
Right.
where they are that humble. And that's not knocking my clients I've worked with for the past 20 years. It's just saying that when you're really actively in recovery and you're in a basically like a recovery center, then that's your whole focus of your whole day is
Right.
your recovery. That there's just it's much more in their face as to how important, like, what are the stakes?
Yep.
What are the real stakes for this? And when someone's just living their life and they're, a mom or a dad, or they're at work, or they're running their own business, and this is something they came to my office for 2 hours that they set aside, there's just a different level of self-awareness and
Sure.
self-education. So it's when we first started volunteering at the center where you run the program there, I was like, yeah, I really hope this helps. Like, I mean, are these women going to benefit from this? And the answer is they benefit at least as much, if not more, from those sessions than the clients that I see. Or everyone benefits the same, maybe is a better way to say it, but the
Mhm.
level of awareness that they had about how much the work was actually doing for them was really incredible. And then having the ability to be in a community where you're seeing other people
Right.
also growing and changing, and being able to reflect on the source of that change. Oh, this is the life activation that I did.
Yeah.
This is that aura healing that I did.
Mm-hmm.
This is that emotional rebirth healing that I did. Oh, there's really something going on here.
It's kind of like people get to a point, small or large, where they're like, something's got to give. It's just kind of like something needs to change, or, usually it's someone that knows somebody that is, um, word of mouth kind of thing. But people usually come in with like, I don't know what it is, but something could be better. And
Yeah.
it's just that general, or they hear the word healing, or they, I just think there's an openness to, like, in the world right now too, things could be better. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
what could I do to maybe, there's nothing particularly wrong, but some things, something's got to give. Could be better. Yeah.
So what is the essence of healing to you? Because you've explored healing from a very unique, very focused perspective now for the last 25 years. And
Mhm.
what does healing mean to you?
Wow. Great question. I think to me, it's really, and I mean, I got sober at 23 years old. I was young, right? But it's it's definitely that reconnection to joy in the spirit.
Hmm.
And definitely that something that we may have lost along the road of life, but we know it's still in there. And it's not like happiness, it's deep, it's enthusiasm, and just a spark, even if it's just a tiny spark of, I feel good, or I could feel better. Healing is, it's those small moments, and I've seen it in people, after a life activation. It's those small moments of, oh, I feel better. I could feel better. And if I felt better, what could I do? What could my purpose be? Because I think we all know we have that purpose somewhere, even though no one's having that conversation about finding your purpose and finding, like, that meaning. So for me, it's not even about, like, what happened to you in life and how do you get past that. It's acceptance of all of it, because I talk to people, the human condition is a mess. I tell people, even in the treatment center, pull someone off the street, like, there's a mess there. We're all just kind of like a mess on some level, but some of that's
That's
really cool and wonderful. And that's what we do in the treatment center, is we come alongside your mess and we just say, hey, how, do you want to move in this direction? And we help people figure out within their own strengths and what brings them joy, like, how do you move one step forward? So it's definitely not erasing the mess, or figuring out the mess. Even, it's in the midst of the mess saying, oh, there's a spark inside of me. It's divinity,
Mhm.
it's God, it's joy. That's the foundation of healing,
It's
in my
amazing.
opinion.
I mean, what you were just saying is it's just inspirational, and reminds me, like, there are a lot of people talking about purpose.
Hmm.
A lot of people. But what you just nailed, and I love it so much, is that all those people talking about purpose are trying to pretend that they're not a mess.
Right. I love why I've been also doing this for 25 years is I love walking into a place every day and people are just like, yeah, I'm a mess. There's no pretending. And the cool thing is, as the staff, you know, as above, so below, all that, like I'm very open of the fact that I say oops 5 times a day, maybe more. Do you know what I
Mhm.
mean? Like I don't have it figured out. I never will. Even when I got promoted into the director position, I said, you made the right choice because I don't have the answers, but I know how to find them. Like
Mhm.
that's how you're present with people. You're just like, okay, we're both kind of figuring it out as we go and make that fun and have a good time with it. It's not like a
Mhm.
heavy, scary thing when the truth can come out that within my mess, I'm going to find purpose. And that purpose is not outside of me. That
Mhm.
purpose is going to start inside of me. So in that way, every person's completely unique and they came here with that purpose. And like I said, I'm now working with men is phenomenal because in the world I've discovered, I don't think people are saying to men, how are you feeling and how can I help? And we
Mhm.
ask men that question, even though yes, they're in a treatment center, so they know there's a problem. Um, they crack wide open, and
Mhm.
you know, for them, they remember. People remember there's a spark of divinity in them. Not one person has said to me, "What are you talking about, crazy lady?" Like people,
Mhm.
people I have realized in the past 3 months how much we really know that and how we need to be having that conversation openly with all people about
Mhm.
because no like I can't say it enough. Nobody says, nah, not me. I'm too far gone. They're like, oh, that's so cool. You're right. And it's amazing. It is like rebirth, you know?
Mhm.
Yeah.
What percentage of energy would you say the average person that you've known in your life, not those who are in recovery,
Hmm.
sorry, not those who are in a recovery center, not those who have come through your program, but the other people that you met in life who are not saying, "Oh, I need help." What percentage of their energy would you speculate they're spending on holding it together so that they can seem like they're not a mess? Because most people that I meet, and I say this, I'm not breaking any client confidentiality here because I'm not naming anyone, but I'll
Hmm.
name all my clients. I most of the clients that I work with, on some level, they have like this chunk of their life together, and then
Right.
there's this whole other thing
Yep.
where that's really not together.
Right.
And what makes them quote unquote like a normal person living in society, but AKA like I'm not homeless or I'm not in a treatment center or like I'm not a what other people would call an addict or like I'm functioning in my life, right? Is that they have just enough of it together.
Right.
Maybe they have what they think is 90% of their life together. We can talk about how we're multidimensional beings and the chance that they really have 90% of their entire life together is very low. But even if that's putting that aside, putting the whole multidimensional beings thing aside, um, which we can't put aside really, but let's pretend for
Yep.
just a minute. We can pretend because the average person doesn't know that they're really a multidimensional being,
Yep.
right? So they can self-define, they can define themselves and they can say, well, my life looks pretty good actually. What percentage of the energy are they spending to to hold that together?
I think the holding together and the trying to not look at the messy parts is what drives addiction and addiction as a behavior, an escape behavior, right?
Mm,
Video games, shopping, whatever it
mhm,
is. I think that I'm so afraid to look at the part of it that's messy. I better just push on with this other thing and try to fill the void of what will happen if I look at that. So I think it
mhm.
kind of creates itself. Whereas it's
There's
beautiful
so
to
much
think of.
wisdom in that. Like, I wish that someone could, like, play this podcast to, like, all 12-year-olds.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
Save them, like
I go back to like 5 because I have 3 sons. And when my youngest was born, I'm like, I really wanted to pay attention and say, where do they start to lose the complete spark, like that wonder
hmm,
about the world? And it was around 5, 6 Nothing
Mhm.
bad happened even. It was just they start to harden up a little bit, so
Well, we
to
call that
really
the age of reason in the mystery
yeah,
school,
yeah,
age 5 to 6, and you start to basically, like, lose the protection of the angels at that time.
yeah, yeah,
We're all protected by the angels at all times, but they really sort of step aside and they go, "Okay, human, you're gonna live your life now and you're gonna experience the world."
mhm,
And that godlike innocence starts to really disappear, and they start to develop the human mind,
mhm,
which according to all Hermetic teachings in the mystery school is super polluted
yep.
and
And that's
allows
that's the cool thing about the life activation is kind of like hitting a reset button in a way,
Mhm.
and
On the mind.
yeah, and actually just moving some of that stuff out that's clogging up, the inflow of light and connection and energy. And you can see it in a person. I worked with one young man, and he literally after the session opened his eyes and he said, I can see. I couldn't see. So it's just like the potential there
Mm.
for people to have a different view and a different sense of like themselves in the world and how that's going to look. Why would you actively knowingly self-destruct when you know like you're reconnected to your own divinity?
Mm.
It's pretty, you know
Yeah,
yeah.
that's huge. Where do you see, you know, what would you like to see maybe? I mean, whether it's you feel it's happening already or realistic or not, at this time in history, what would you like to see happen with recovery and healing? I mean, you just opened a healing center, so I'm guessing maybe this is a preloaded question, but what's your vision?
Well, we have a small office in town where we're seeing people, but my vision since you came to Emerson, come to, where I work like 4 years ago was that we have a center with both residential and, kind of like an outpatient options for people. So this like wellness can be whole and the foundation can be energy work because it gives everything else a better chance. I
Yeah,
don't I don't really foresee true healing without it. I
without energy work.
No, I think this work with the Modern Mystery School is the thing I've been hanging in 25 years to find out about
Mm,
how like I come in every day with a drive to like help people. No, you can stay and you can stay well. Like you can take a look at what it was and then get on this other path and continue to grow and flourish. And I've seen lots and lots of women do that. But this I know is different. And this I know continues to open and continues to reconnect us to our purpose and continues to just bring an excitement for growth and life that is what life should be, and recovery definitely is. So
yeah.
um I yeah, I think it's because in a strange way, the state's not funding longer term residential programs anymore. Everything's short term. So in that short term, I feel a responsibility to give people this foundational piece so that they can continue on with their own healing and stay reconnected once they leave. So I would see something, more of a residential and um, outpatient center.
Mm. Is the state not funding long term because they found that that's not effective? Has that been studied, and is that
So
or
insurance companies don't cover long term because insurance companies only cover things that are medical necessity. So they consider 28 days medical necessity. Uh, but then there's what about the spirit? There's spiritual necessity. Hey, maybe that's the thing we'll go in that
Mm,
direction because the medical necessity, but then the spiritual, is and being able to practice that and really um, have time reestablishing your own habits and choices is what the longer term really helps with. And
mhm,
as systems do, it's backwards.
right.
That they'll pay for short term repeatedly, but really not for the long term. Longer
Interesting.
term. Yeah.
It sounds like what you're talking about is like what we hit up against in terms of creating a better, more livable world for everyone all the time, is that systems need to like change their baseline evaluation.
Right.
Like, what's what, like, is it just profit, or is it profit and livelihood and people and, ecological sustainability and vibrant communities?
Yeah.
And if we evaluate what we're doing and how we take our actions, in recovery and in the world of recovery, and say,
Mm.
well, we need a spiritual baseline, a
Right.
spiritual necessity. Where's a
Yeah.
person at spiritually, which I think is a little tough for people, because as for everything I observe, humanity is still just beginning to come out of the concept of like spirituality means religion.
Right. Right.
And there's plenty of
Absolutely.
parts of the world that, have just doubled down on old school religion in the last 100 years,
Mhm.
and like fundamentalist religion as being like a method of saving yourself, or being whatever the concept is behind that. It doesn't necessarily even make sense
Mhm.
when who's not in it.
Yeah, and I see like, an expansion of the conversation when people have had some of the healing is to have a forum where people can continue, you know, much like what those 12-step programs do is connect people. It's what they do. Talk to another person who's, trying to be better, because that's what the 12-step fellowship is. It's not even about like, oh, we don't use or drink. It's about, oh, life's hard and I don't self-destruct. And so you get with other people and talk about how they're handling things. And I think that energetically, we need to build a forum like that where people can drop in and have conversations about, what light work they're doing and how it's helping them. And to really open up what's working with that. There's something called Refuge Recovery, which is kind of new in the past few years, and it's like a Buddhist approach, and
Mhm.
it's exploding. People love it because it's more than just like focusing on the thing you don't want to be doing. It's more
Right.
about the growth and the potential, and it's about and that's meditation and doing
Mhm.
those things, and having a community that you can stay connected to once you leave your session, you know, in a center with you, or whether you're in a program and have like that accessibility to this conversation,
Yeah.
like you're doing with the podcast. You know,
Right.
Ariana and I are working on stuff.
I've heard a little bit. It's very exciting. Community is really essential, and it's, that like you said, it's one of the reasons I do this podcast, because I started this podcast when, like, we're kind of around the time we came out of like lockdowns in 2020 with COVID,
Mhm.
like, August, September. I think the first episode was in September 2020 with this podcast, and I took a break from it a little bit, like last summer, last fall, and now I'm sort of starting it up again. And people, really were telling me like, I'm missing that podcast, even though
Absolutely.
there's this, we're not even doing this one live. This is pre-recorded, so this is going to go live, afterwards, and
Mhm.
people can comment on it then. But just seeing two people having a conversation about this work, that's part of community too.
Please, I've sat and taken notes during your podcast. I've learned a
Yeah,
ton. It's really been, it's
yeah,
it's it's really helpful. Or people that I've worked with, I've said, oh, you can learn so much more, refer them to your podcast, because people are
yeah.
starving and thirsty and hungry for these connections and these conversations about the good news is not outside of you, it's inside of you.
Right.
And there's a way on this path that you can discover that and grow with it and evolve and change. And I don't think there's anything like it. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, and having online community isn't the same as in person, but I think if we can create online community and then bridge that into real community and real meeting people in person and
Yeah.
having those kinds of connections, then maybe we can create some sort of hybrid experience of what we really need, for because that human connection really is a need. We say there's needs that will literally like die without, and love is one of those needs. And we get our love from inside, but we also, we're very much social creatures, and we do
Yeah.
get our love from human connection as well. And if someone goes totally alone in the wilderness for years, they always pretty much lose their minds.
Mhm.
with the exception maybe of like Himalayan monks who, we would say they're in meditation the whole time, and they're not really alone.
Right.
But if you're alone, you'll lose it.
Mm-hmm.
You'll like absolutely go, bleep bleep crazy.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, the opposite of addiction is connection, and human connection is part of that connection.
Yeah.
And connection with self is part of that connection. Connection with God, by whatever name you call God, is part of that connection. And how we make connection is, some of it's really obvious, and then when we do this mystery school work, even though the tools themselves are really simple, the kind of connection is surprising. I mean, I remember when I first took Kabbalah, the way we teach it in the mystery school, and I was immediately connected with myself.
Mm-hmm.
Shockingly and surprisingly, like I had no idea I could be connected with myself like
Yeah.
that. First day, like I got, we took the bus to work the next day, and life was miraculous in new ways that it had never been miraculous. Or maybe it was miraculous like that, like you said, age 5, when I was 5 years old.
Yeah.
And I started feeling that sense of possibility, that sense of connection with myself, that sense of connection with joy, with something much greater, with a purpose that I could really feel tangibly, even though I didn't know what it was yet.
Mm-hmm.
And that's so missing from people's lives. To bring it back to what I was saying earlier, the multidimensionality. A lot of people's lives are, especially when you're in addiction, it's like you're so focused.
Right.
You're just focused on your addiction.
Yep.
To the point that you'll, in most cases, like you'll destroy your relationships
Completely.
just to feed your addiction.
But that focus is, I want to be numb. I cannot. Maybe it starts because of some stress, anxiety, some trauma, but then it just becomes, I want to not feel. And so.
And why? Why do I want to not feel?
Because people don't know how to cope. I think they have this internal spiritual God void, this divine void, and they don't know how to fill that. They don't, and if you're not, no one's telling them, so it's just like, if I have to keep running from this because it's scary and numbing, and then the numbing doesn't work. And so that's why being able to reconnect people to themselves and have them have sometimes a profoundly peaceful experience is the answer.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's part of the answer. Yeah.
When you see people relapse and you see them go back into their addictions, what's the most common thread there?
They lost connection with other people. When I first started working in treatment, I was working evenings, and I got a phone call, and I picked up the phone, and this woman had like 28 years sober, and she had relapsed, and she called, and she was crying. And I was like, what do I say to a woman who's got 28 years in recovery? And I said, when's the last time you talked to another person, like in recovery? And she's like, I can't remember. She lost her connection. People lose their connections to other people, to that sense of hope. That's really the biggest thing. They were doing things that made them feel better, that gave them a sense of purpose, and they just kind of like started working too much, or started dancing as fast as they could, and lost sight of like themselves, and keeping that connection with other people, having like a common language. It's why we need a common language around not just like wellness and self-care, but about your divine self, and how do you take care of that? Yeah.
So it's always so good for me to hear, because it's been so long that I've been doing this work. I got initiated in the mystery school in 2005, and now it's 2022, so almost 17 years now. I started meditating every day of my life when I was 14, and I never really fell into significant or serious addiction, except maybe for like a year and a half, high school and college, with marijuana and a little bit of alcohol. And then it was like, well, what am I doing? Like, why would I be in this? This is just stopping everything in my life from happening. And during that time, everything was just like a fog. During that like year and a half to 2 year long period, I remember what happened, but like I was making decisions that I was like, who was even making that decision?
Yeah.
Right. So even though I didn't really spend any significant chunk of my life in a serious addiction state, is, really total of less than 2 years. Um, and it was all questions of emotions I didn't know how to handle too.
Totally. Yeah.
Like, that was time in my life when I had gone through a very serious trauma in my late teenage years, and it floored me, but I didn't even know that it floored me.
Right. Right.
And then it bubbled up as addiction.
Yeah. Escape.
Yeah, and I was like, "Well, I'm fine."
Yeah.
I went to a therapist for a year, and I, dealt with it.
Mhm.
I dealt with that trauma, and I thought I got over it, but then, my addiction showed me, you're not really over it.
Yeah.
So, but yet I had all these other tools that I was still using those tools, and I just realized I need to use these tools more, and that by the time I just really started using those tools again, I was meditating many hours every day, and that just pulled me out of it,
Mhm.
because I didn't need to avoid myself anymore. So
Well, when you were talking, I was thinking what really came ringing through was like, who am I? That's a
yeah,
terrifying question for people. Never mind a teenager, never mind, you know what I mean, when no one's really giving you a ton of positive feedback or spiritual guidance. Who am I? I think people are terrified of that question.
yeah,
Yeah.
people are terrified of who am I, and, because I think on the other side of that question, they're terrified maybe they're not a good person.
Right. Right. Look at the things I've done or thought. Yeah.
Right, and then how could I be really truly good?
Right. Yeah.
I found myself in the middle of that addiction, really high on some pretty hardcore stuff, wanting to die or kill
Mm.
myself.
Mhm.
And I couldn't get the repetitive thoughts out of my head that
Yeah.
essentially, like, I'm this very limited being. I'm a human, and I don't really know, even if I have a purpose, I don't really know who I am, and therefore none of this even matters.
Yep.
None of
Yeah.
it really matters.
Yeah.
So why stay around in this life?
Mhm.
And who would even care if I died? Who would
Yeah.
even care if I weren't here? Right? And that's very close to that ultimate disconnect.
Well, and I think along those lines, like that's what I meant earlier by if, people who end up with addictions tend to be super sensitive and they don't know how to cope with the bullshit in the world and the confusion and the negativity. And so they use substances as a buffer in order not to kill themselves.
Right.
And, you know, be- and so that's why that spiritual connection and that connection through other people brings back to them a sense of, oh, I'm okay. You know what I mean? That's really what the 12 step did is somebody could look at you and know that there was a mess there and still say, come back, good to see you. Come back. It's going to get better. Keep it simple.
Mhm.
Just those grounding reminders that maybe no one's telling you it's okay and certainly not telling you you're a good person.
Right.
Yeah.
And how do we tell that to ourselves? That's a huge thing with the mystery school. It's like we come to know it for ourselves,
Right.
and then no one can take that away. And so that's what just looping back to what I was saying a few minutes ago, before I was sharing about, my relatively brief period of time, like with marijuana and alcohol and a few other drugs that were thrown in the mix for a little while there.
Mhm.
Um, it's like, yes, I was missing that self connection. Yes, I was avoiding something, but I wasn't necessarily realizing that there was like a battle going on.
Right. Yeah.
I see people who are really strong in their recovery, and I see warriors.
Hmm.
I see people who are fighting a battle.
Yeah.
And I think maybe in my observation, both of people in life, people who are mystery school initiates and people who are in recovery, not that those things are necessarily separate at all, but just different sort of categories. And there's this common thread of people who are successful in life in the mystery school with the path of progression, meaning they're moving forward, they're taking steps, and they're really doing service in the light. And service is, reminding yourself and other people that you are God, that
Hmm.
there's divinity inside of each one of us. That's
Yeah.
how the mystery school defines service. And that people who are also in recovery are asking that who am I question, and they're really pursuing the answer.
Yeah.
They're genuinely pursuing the answer, not just asking it, academically or
Mhm.
figured it out and now I'm going to go have a drink, but they're asking it every day. They're truly wanting to know, and they're realizing that they're fighting against, like, what we call in the mystery school and in many other spiritual circles, your negative ego.
Sure.
Always fight, like, the negative ego doesn't go away. I was teaching this weekend, and a couple of students were really deeply asking questions about that. Like, well, what is the negative ego, and like, where do we ever get over it? And according to mystery school teachings, like, the negative ego is always there.
Mm-hmm.
It never goes away. Like, you can be in recovery like that woman you're talking about for 28 years, and the ego can creep in, maybe day by day, maybe week by week, maybe year by year, and cut you off from who you are, cut you off from your connections, cut you
But
off.
with this work, you can identify it, right? With
Yes.
this work, you say, oh, like when I want to fight someone, they're not wanting to fight me. It's my negative ego. So the cool thing is, the good news is it's always me. You know what I mean?
Oh, it's me. That's the best and the worst news.
That's the best news ever. Problem's me. I'm the solution too. So
Yeah. Yeah, the ego hates that news, but then all the power is in our hands.
yeah, totally. Yep.
No one else is making our addiction happen. No one else is making our life happen.
Yep.
And that empowerment, yeah, we might shy away from it because it's uncomfortable. But if someone can lean into that uncomfort zone, that's a new word, maybe new term, that discomfort zone, they're going to grow, and they're not going to.
Recovery, the saying is getting comfortable with your discomfort. That's kind of a baseline that we use. Like, you're uncomfortable, get used to it, because your comfort zone is shitty and sick and dysfunctional. So being healthy is going to be uncomfortable because it's new, so.
And that level of honesty is so essential, and that's missing from so many people's lives.
Yeah.
Even many people I see get initiated in the mystery school, they're like, oh, my comfort zone might be my friend. And it's like, your comfort zone is never your friend.
Right.
Never your friend. Like, I never make progress. I never do something good. I never serve other people. I never really serve myself when I'm comfortable.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Like, we fool ourselves about that. And the more we fool ourselves about that, the less we have joy.
Right. Especially if that's what you think. If you think that's what peace is, like, oh no, it's just being comfortable and not challenging yourself or not looking to new things, then that can be a trap too. Like, people think that's what they want, is just to be comfortable,
Right.
Yeah.
It's this huge trap. It's a huge trap. And it feeds all addiction.
Mm-hmm.
Sure. And it feeds us not succeeding and excelling in life and having, amazing lives that are filled with joy.
A lot of what we do in the treatment program, and I like to do it outside of work too, is like in the morning check-in is like, what's your challenge today? So it's to pick something out of your comfort zone and do that, be it small or large, and just build that muscle of, oh, being uncomfortable is my growth zone, and that's kind of what I want to be looking at.
If these were life skills taught in school, would addiction even be a thing in our society?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Would we even have anything more than a tiny handful of people falling into addiction if we were taught in elementary school, every day do something that challenges you, every day get out of your comfort zone, every day do something that brings you connection, every day do something that brings you joy, every day do something that's real service to remember that you're God and remind someone else that they're God. What do you need to do those things? And then life, when you do that, life matters.
Right.
And you matter, and other people matter.
Yep.
And your inner peace matters, and your external peace is automatic. When you are really taking care of your inner peace, then external peace is just, it's a given. And
the idea of trying to do it perfect goes away completely, because there's no such thing. A lot of times people are like, but I'm going to make mistakes. And I'm like, yeah, you're going to make a lot of them. Like, that's that's how you learn.
That's part of your discomfort zone.
Yeah. Cool things happen when you make mistakes. You know what I mean?
Absolutely. We're over our time here. So I think maybe we have another podcast in the future, because we're not done.
The imperfect zone. Yes.
The imperfect zone. We're going to keep going, but not today. Well, so this has been awesome. I really appreciate you taking the time.
Totally my pleasure. Thank you so much.
Yeah. I hope this conversation was beneficial to everyone who's listening. And, we're going to go post this. We're not live, but please do make comments and we'll try and answer those. And we love you all. Thanks for watching. Take care.
Thank you.
Have a great day or afternoon or evening whenever you see this.